It was a crisp Tuesday morning in the quiet suburb of Crestwood Pines, Colorado, when I sipped my coffee in the cedar cabin I'd built with my own hands. The sunrise painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, and for a moment, everything felt perfect. That is, until a woman in a sharp blazer marched into my backyard with the confidence of someone carrying a clipboard and a grudge. Little did I know, this encounter would spark a battle that would turn our neighborhood upside down, exposing greed, corruption, and the kind of petty tyranny that makes your blood boil. By the end of it, the woman who tried to destroy my sanctuary would be begging to keep her own home. My name is Tom Hargrove, a 52-year-old software engineer who moved to Crestwood Pines 2 years ago. The cabin wasn't just a shed. It was my home office, complete with electricity, insulation, and every county permit framed proudly by the door. I'd spent 6 months building it, pouring my heart into every nail and board. It was my refuge, a place where I could code in peace while watching deer graze in the distance. But that morning, Elizabeth Carver, the newly elected president of the Crestwood Pines Homeowners Association, had other plans. "Good morning, Tom," she said, her smile as polished as her heels. "I'm just introducing myself to the neighborhood." Her handshake was firm, but her eyes scanned my property like a hawk sizing up prey. "This cabin is charming," she added, her tone dripping with condescension. "Very rustic." I thanked her, feeling a twinge of unease. It took 6 months to build, but it's fully permitted. The county even used it as an example of proper construction. Elizabeth nodded, but her smile tightened. "That's great, Tom, but the HOA has its standards, to protect property values." She handed me a document labeled Violation Notice in bold red letters. My stomach sank as I read it. My cabin was deemed an unpermitted structure that detracted from community aesthetics. I had 72 hours to tear it down or face $500 daily fines. The notice was vague, citing no specific rules, and her friendly facade vanished. This wasn't a neighborly visit, it was an ambush. "Elizabeth, there's a mistake here," I said, keeping my voice steady. "This cabin is legal. Can you show me the exact HOA rule I'm breaking?" Her smile vanished, replaced by a cold stare. "The HOA has broad authority, Tom. This structure needs to go." She turned and walked away, leaving me with a piece of paper that felt like a declaration of war. Anger simmered in my chest, but I'm not one to act rashly. Elizabeth had underestimated me, and that was her first mistake. That evening, I spread out the HOA covenants on my dining table, poring over every word. What I found was alarming. Recent amendments, pushed through since Elizabeth's election 6 months ago, were so vague they could outlaw anything from a birdhouse to a mailbox. Her election itself was shaky, won by a slim margin after the previous president's sudden resignation. I called the county planning office the next morning, confirming my cabin's permits were airtight. The inspector laughed, saying my work was textbook perfect. Wednesday brought Elizabeth back, this time with a weary-looking lawyer named Harold Vance, and 3 neighbors trailing behind like reluctant accomplices. Margaret Ellis, my next-door neighbor, gave me an apologetic shrug. I invited them onto my porch, where I'd laid out my permits like a battle map. "Harold, my cabin is fully legal," I said, walking him through each document. His face grew pale as I cited a Denver case where HOA rules couldn't override county laws. Elizabeth's foot tapped impatiently, her face reddening. "This is about community standards, Tom," she snapped. Margaret piped up. "I think his cabin's lovely, Elizabeth. Maybe we're focusing on the wrong things." The neighbors' support wavered Elizabeth's confidence, but she doubled down. "You have 72 hours, or we'll sue and fine you." As she stormed off, Harold mouthed, "I'm sorry," and I knew I had an opening. That night, I called my old college friend, Mike Russo, a private investigator with a knack for sniffing out fraud. "Mike, dig into Elizabeth Carver. Something's off." He promised results by morning. Thursday, I walked the neighborhood, noticing Elizabeth's house, a massive colonial with an unpermitted deck, extended driveway, and fancy landscaping. Suspicious, I dug into the HOA meeting minutes. Elizabeth had approved shady contracts, including one with a landscaping company called Evergreen Solutions. When Mike called that evening, his voice was electric. "Tom, Evergreen Solutions is a ghost. No state registration, a fake P.O. box, and a bank account. It's Elizabeth's. She's been funneling HOA funds into her pocket while her own house modifications lack permits. Oh, and she's drowning in debt. Her mortgage is a mess. The pieces clicked. Elizabeth wasn't just a control freak. She was a crook. When she texted me that night, offering a compromise to move my cabin, I saw her desperation. "Let's meet tomorrow at 8 a.m., I replied. "In my backyard." I spent the night organizing Mike's evidence. Bank records, unpermitted modifications, and proof of her scam. Friday morning, Elizabeth arrived alone, carrying coffee and wearing a sweater instead of her usual power suit. "I may have been too harsh, Tom," she said, offering a fake smile. "Maybe we can keep the cabin with some changes like landscaping from Evergreen Solutions." I couldn't believe her gall. "Does Evergreen Solutions even exist, Elizabeth?" I asked. Her face went white, and before she could recover, half the neighborhood marched into my backyard, led by Margaret. Margaret spoke first. "We're here to support Tom." Then Ellen Carter, a retired teacher, dropped a bombshell. "I tried auditing the HOA books, and Elizabeth shut me down. Then my mailbox was smashed, and I got 3 violations in a day." The crowd erupted, sharing stories of fines and threats. I handed out Mike's evidence, showing Elizabeth's theft through Evergreen. "She's been stealing from us all," I said. The neighbors were livid. Ellen demanded Elizabeth's resignation. When Elizabeth tried to deflect, calling my cabin a violation, the crowd turned on her. She called 911 in a panic, but the police, after reviewing my permits and her fraud, suggested someone contact the DA. By Saturday, Elizabeth called an emergency HOA meeting to expel me, claiming I was a disruptive influence. The community center was packed, the air thick with tension. Elizabeth ranted for 10 minutes, painting me as a rebel destroying property values. When my turn came, I laid out her crimes: unpermitted home improvements, ownership of Evergreen, and misuse of HOA funds. The room exploded as neighbors realized they'd been overpaying for her fake company. Board member Patricia Hayes demanded her resignation. Elizabeth's final threat to sue everyone into oblivion sealed her fate. A unanimous vote removed her as president. 3 days later, I sent Elizabeth a registered letter from Hargrove Holdings, my consulting business. I'd bought her mortgage at a discount, leveraging my fintech connections. Her house was over-leveraged, and she couldn't pay. "You have 2 options," I told her over the phone. "I call the loan due, you lose the house, or you rent it from me at $4,500 a month, triple your mortgage." She called it extortion. I called it consequences. She chose to rent. 6 months later, Crestwood Pines was transformed. Margaret, now interim president, canceled Evergreen's contract, slashing landscaping costs. My cabin became a neighborhood gem, inspiring others to build their own. Elizabeth, working 2 jobs and driving a beat-up Civic, kept her head down. I started a side business helping neighbors with permits, even fixing Elizabeth's illegal modifications. Her other scams in nearby communities collapsed, and she faded into obscurity. As I write this, sipping coffee in my cabin, I see Elizabeth's Civic pull out. In 18 months, her rent will pay off her mortgage, and I'll own her house outright. Do I feel bad? Not when I recall her smug demand to destroy my cabin or the fear she spread through our neighborhood. Justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's a quiet check in the mail. What do you think about this story? Have you faced bullies or injustice in your community? Share your thoughts in the comments. Should people like Elizabeth face harsher consequences? Or is this punishment enough? Let's hear your take.